Kim Dae-ho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished loading the last cargo container. Another long day at Nexus Station was coming to an end. The massive space station buzzed with activity as thousands of alien species moved through its corridors, trading goods and sharing information from across the galaxy. Dae-ho had worked as a cargo inspector for 3 years now. It was simple work that paid well enough to send money back to his family on Earth. He checked manifests, scanned containers, and made sure everything followed galactic trade laws. Nothing exciting ever happened, which was exactly how he liked it. He walked toward the exit of Cargo Bay 7, his work tablet tucked under his arm. The station's artificial gravity made his steps feel normal, even though he knew they were spinning through space at incredible speeds. All around him, aliens of different shapes and sizes went about their business. The tall, crystal-like Veltari hummed their musical language to each other. The insect-like Mokari clicked and buzzed as they counted their profits. The four-armed Therians moved their goods with efficient precision. Dae-ho had gotten used to working alongside these different species. At first, it had been strange and a little frightening. Now he barely noticed their unusual appearances. They were just people trying to make a living, same as him. The security checkpoint ahead glowed with soft blue light. Every person had to pass through it when entering or leaving the cargo areas. The scanners were incredibly advanced, able to read everything from DNA patterns to the history of what someone had been exposed to. The technology was far beyond anything humans had invented on their own. Dae-ho approached the scanning gate like he had done hundreds of times before. He placed his work tablet in the tray and stepped forward. The blue light washed over him from head to toe. Usually, the scan took only a few seconds, then the gate would beep once and let him pass. This time was different. The blue light turned red. Alarms began blaring throughout the cargo bay. The gate's display screen flickered and changed from the standard galactic script to something much older and more elaborate. Strange symbols appeared that Dae-ho had never seen before. The words that appeared made his blood run cold. Warning: subject bears mark of divine retribution. Quarantine protocol initiated. Metal barriers slammed down on both sides of the gate, trapping Dae-ho in the scanning chamber. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow. The alarm was so loud he had to cover his ears. All around the cargo bay, aliens stopped what they were doing and stared. Some of them looked at the ancient symbols on the screen and their faces changed. The Velthari's crystal bodies began to dim and pulse with dark colors. The Mokari started making rapid clicking sounds that Dae-ho recognized as their panic call. Even the normally calm Therians backed away from the security gate. "What's happening?" Dae-ho shouted over the alarms, but no one answered him. Within minutes, security teams arrived. Park So-jin, the station's head of security, pushed through the crowd of onlookers. She was a tough woman who had served in the human military before taking this job. Dae-ho had met her a few times and always found her to be fair and professional. "Dae-ho, are you hurt?" she called out through the barrier. "I'm fine, but I can't get out. The gate won't let me pass." So-jin studied the display screen with a frown. "I've never seen these symbols before. The computer is reading something in your biological signature that's triggering an ancient protocol." More security officers arrived, along with station technicians. They connected their devices to the scanning gate and began running diagnostics. The crowd of aliens grew larger, but Dae-ho noticed they all kept their distance. Some species were actually leaving the cargo bay entirely. An older Therian pushed through the crowd. His forearms were shaking and his multiple eyes were wide with what looked like terror. He stared at the symbols on the screen and then at Dae-ho. "The burned one," the Therian whispered in broken galactic standard. "The burned one walks among us." "What does that mean?" So-jin demanded. The Therian's voice trembled as he spoke. "Long ago, before your species reached the stars, there were those who claimed to be gods. They judged lesser races and found most wanting. Those who survived, their judgment bore marks that could never be hidden." The alien pointed at the screen with one of his trembling arms. "These symbols, they have not been seen for 1,000 years. They mark one who has faced divine wrath and lived." Dae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. He looked down at his left arm where a faint scar ran from his elbow to his wrist. He had always had it ever since he was a child. His parents told him it came from an accident when he was very young, but they never wanted to talk about the details. The scar was barely visible most of the time, just a thin line of slightly different skin. But now, under the red emergency lights, it seemed to glow with a soft, strange light. "Sir," one of the technicians called to Sojin. "The scanner is detecting an energy signature embedded in his arm. The pattern matches the symbols on the display." Sojin activated her communication device. "Control, this is Security Chief Park. I need Administrator Choi and the Xenobiology team down to Cargo Bay 7 immediately. We have a situation." The Therion Elder was still staring at Daeho with fear in his eyes. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "The God Killers vanished long ago. Their judgment ended. There should be no more burned ones." "God Killers?" Daeho asked. "What are you talking about?" But the Therion had already turned and hurried away, his forearms wrapped around himself as if he was trying to hide. More aliens began to leave the cargo bay. The few who remained watched Daeho from a safe distance, whispering among themselves. He could hear fragments of conversations in different languages, but the tone was always the same: fear, wonder, and confusion. "So-Jin," Daeho called through the barrier. "I need to know what's happening to me. This scar on my arm? It's always been there, but I never knew what it was from." The security chief looked at the scar, then at the symbols on the screen. "We're going to figure this out, Daeho, but first we need to understand what the scanner detected. Can you tell me anything about your childhood? Any accidents or unusual events?" Daeho thought back to his earliest memories. They were fragments, mostly. He remembered being on a ship with his parents when he was very young. There had been bright lights and loud noises. People were screaming and running. His parents had put him in some kind of pod, and the next thing he remembered was waking up in a hospital on Earth. "I was in some kind of accident when I was 3, he said. "My parents never liked talking about it. They said it was too painful to remember." So-Jin nodded grimly. "We're going to need to contact Earth and get your family's records. Something tells me this is bigger than just a scanner malfunction." As if to prove her point, the station's communication system crackled to life. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Word was spreading that something unprecedented had been discovered on Nexus Station. The ancient warning symbols were being recognized by elder species who had thought they would never see them again. Kim Daeho, a simple cargo inspector, had become the center of the most significant discovery in galactic history, and he had no idea why. Station Administrator Choi Min-ho arrived at Cargo Bay 7 with a team of scientists and security personnel. He was a tall, serious man who had been running Nexus Station for over a decade. Daeho had only seen him from a distance before, usually when important alien dignitaries visited the station. "Release the quarantine," Min-ho ordered the technicians, "but keep him under guard." The metal barriers lifted, and Daeho stepped out of the scanning chamber. His legs felt weak and his hands were shaking. 2 security officers flanked him, but they kept their distance. Even they seemed nervous about getting too close. "Mr. Kim," Min-ho said formally, "I need you to come with me to the conference room. We have questions that need answers." They walked through the station's corridors, and Daeho noticed how different everything felt. Aliens who normally paid no attention to humans now stared at him with wide eyes. Some backed against the walls as he passed. Others made gestures that looked like prayers or protective symbols. The conference room was filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. Daeho had never seen so many different races in one place. The air was thick with tension and the smell of various alien biochemistries. Dr. Lee Hai-jin, the station's chief xenoarchaeologist, was setting up a holographic display. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but today she looked tired and worried. "Show them what we found," Min-ho said to her. The holographic display came to life, showing images of ancient artifacts and symbols. The same symbols that had appeared on the security gate were carved into stone tablets and metal plates from across the galaxy. These symbols belong to a civilization that disappeared over 1,000 years ago, Dr. Lee explained. "We call them the Nexari. though that might not be their real name. Most species have legends about them. An elderly Velthari in the front row began to resonate with low, mournful tones. When she spoke, her crystalline voice was filled with sadness. "The shepherds," she said. "They came from beyond the known stars. They judged which species were worthy to continue, and which should be corrected." A Mokari representative clicked, rapidly before translating his words into Galactic Standard. "My people's oldest stories tell of the Great Cleansing. Entire worlds fell silent when the god beings decided they had grown too proud or too dangerous." Dr. Lee nodded and changed the holographic display. Now it showed star charts with red marks scattered across different systems. "We found evidence of the Nexari's presence in 17 different sectors. In each case, advanced civilization suddenly disappeared, leaving only small populations of survivors. These survivors always bore similar marks to what Mr. Kim carries." She zoomed in on one particular star system. "But there's something unique about the human case. In every other instance we've studied, the Nexari marked survivors from existing populations on planets. They never marked anyone who was traveling through space." Minho leaned forward in his chair. "Tell them what we found in the old records." Dr. Lee's expression grew grim. 3 days ago, after the security incident, we sent requests to Earth for any information about Mr. Kim's early life. What we discovered changes everything we thought we knew about first contact between humans and the Nexari." The holographic display shifted again, showing the image of a massive colony ship. It was one of the early human deep space vessels, built to carry thousands of settlers to new worlds. 47 years ago, the colony ship New Sol was traveling to establish a human settlement in the Kepler 442 system. It carried 50,000 people, including families with children. Mr. Kim was 3 years old at the time. Deho stared at the image of the ship. Fragments of memory began to surface. He remembered being scared, holding his mother's hand, looking out a window at strange lights in space. "What happened to them?" asked a Therian delegate, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer would be terrible. "The ship's black box was recovered 18 years later by a human patrol," Dr. Lee continued. "The data it contained was classified by Earth's government until last week, when we requested access for this investigation." She activated a new part of the display. A grainy recording began to play, showing the bridge of the colony ship. The idiot human crew looked relaxed and happy until alarms suddenly began blaring. "Captain's log, day 847 of the mission," a voice said from the recording. "We've encountered something impossible. Long-range sensors are showing an energy signature unlike anything in our databases. It's massive, at least the size of a small moon, but it's not showing up on visual scanners." The recording jumped forward. Now the crew looked terrified. Warning lights were flashing red throughout the ship. "It's not responding to our communications," the captain's voice continued, but now it was strained with panic. "The entity is approaching our position. All attempts to change course have failed. Our engines aren't responding." The recording showed the main view screen of the ship. At first, there was only empty space filled with distant stars. Then something began to appear. It was difficult to see at first, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But slowly, the outline of something enormous became visible. The entity was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It looked like it was made of pure light and energy, constantly shifting and flowing. It had no fixed shape, but there was definitely intelligence behind its movements. As it came closer, everyone in the conference room could feel the power radiating from it, even through the old recording. "My God," the ship's captain whispered. "It's looking at us." What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Beams of energy shot out from the entity and struck different sections of the colony ship. But these weren't attacks meant to destroy. The energy was precise, surgical. It was selecting specific areas of the ship. "Hull breaches on decks 15 through 30, someone shouted from the recording. "We're losing atmosphere in the residential sections. Launch all escape pods," the captain ordered. "All hands abandon ship immediately." The recording showed hundreds of small pods launching from the dying colony ship. Most of them were destroyed by secondary energy bursts from the entity, but some were spared. The entity seemed to be choosing which pods to save and which to destroy. The pods that survived all carried children under the age of 5, Dr. Lee explained quietly, including Mr. Kim. But before the entity let them go, it did something to each child. She paused the recording on an image of the entity extending what looked like tendrils of pure energy toward the escaping pods. It marked them. Every surviving child received a scar that carries an energy signature matching Nexari technology. For 47 years, these children grew up not knowing what they really were. The conference room fell silent. Representatives from different species stared at Daeho with new understanding. He wasn't just a human who had been caught up in something beyond his control. He was a chosen survivor of a god's judgment. How many others are there? Minho asked. Based on the records from Earth, 14 children survived the New Soul incident. They've all lived normal human lives since then. Until now, there was no way to detect the marks they carry. A young Quilari delegate raised her hand. Why did the Nexari spare only human children? In all the other cases we know about, they marked adults who had proven themselves worthy through some test or trial. Dr. Lee shook her head. We don't know. The Nexari vanished after the New Soul incident. There have been no other confirmed sightings of them anywhere in the galaxy. Whatever they did to those human children appears to have been their final act. Daeho finally found his voice. You're saying that thing killed my parents and 49,000 other people, but it let me live for some reason? That's what the evidence suggests, Dr. Lee replied gently. But the question is why? What made human children special enough to save? And why has this information remained hidden for so long? Before anyone could answer, the conference room's communication system activated. An urgent message was being broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. This is priority alert from the Galactic Information Network, the automated voice announced. Breaking news. Ancient alien artifacts detected on human subject at Nexus Station. Nexari presence confirmed. All species advised to implement containment protocols immediately. Minho cursed under his breath. How did this get out so fast? The answer came quickly. Through the conference room's windows, they could see ships beginning to leave the station. Some were departing in panic, while others were arriving in response to the news. The galaxy was learning about the survivor's mark, and the reaction was exactly what they had feared. Daeho looked down at his arm, where the scar was now glowing more brightly than before. Whatever the Nexari had done to him as a child, it was just the beginning of a much larger story. News of the discovery spread through the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Within 6 hours of the security gate incident, every major civilization knew about Kim Daeho and the survivor's mark. The reactions were immediate and extreme. Captain, Yu Jinwoo was in the middle of a routine diplomatic meeting with Quilari representatives when the news broke. He watched in shock as the alien delegates' faces changed from polite interest to pure terror. The meeting is over, the lead Quilari announced, standing up so quickly that her chair fell backward. All human contact is suspended immediately. Wait, Jinwoo called after them as they hurried toward the door. Let's talk about this. Whatever you've heard, we can work through it together. But the Quilari were already gone, leaving him alone in the conference room. His communication device was buzzing with urgent messages from human embassies across the galaxy. Similar scenes were playing out everywhere. Ambassador Han So-young was having an even worse experience on the Therian homeworld. She had been in the middle of negotiating a new trade agreement when Therian security forces surrounded the human embassy. You must leave immediately, the Therian official told her through a translator device. Your species carries the mark of the God Killers. You are no longer welcome here. Our species? So-young asked in confusion. What does that mean? Only one human has been identified with this mark? The Therian's 4 eyes focused on her with something that looked like pity. You do not understand. If one of your kind bears the mark, then all of your kind are tainted by it. The Nexari do not choose randomly. Similar evacuations were happening at human outposts throughout known space. The Velthari Collective had closed all their borders to human ships. The Mokari Trade Federation canceled every contract with human businesses. Even species that had been friendly to humans for decades were now treating them like a dangerous plague. But not all reactions were negative. On the young colony world of Zephyr Prime, the native Zephyrians had a very different response to the news. Their spiritual leaders declared that humans were blessed beings who had survived divine judgment. "They are the chosen ones," announced High Priest Veltar during a planet-wide broadcast. "The gods tested them and found them worthy. We must learn from them." Within hours, Zephyrian ships were heading toward human space, carrying pilgrims who wanted to see these marked survivors for themselves. Their reaction worried human leaders almost as much as the fear and hostility from other species. The most dangerous response came from the hegemony of Keth. Supreme Commander Thakmor saw the situation as an opportunity rather than a threat. If humans survive the judgment of gods, then they possess something valuable, he told his war council. "We will take them alive and study them. Their resistance to divine power could be transferred to our own people." Keth warships began moving toward the borders of human space. Their intentions were clear: capture as many humans as possible for experimentation. Back on Nexus Station, Deho found himself at the center of a growing crisis. He had been moved to a secure section of the station for his own protection, but he could feel the tension building all around him. Dr. Lee Hae-jin visited him regularly to run more tests and ask questions about his memories. She was trying to understand exactly what the Nexari had done to him and the other survivors. "Have you ever felt different from other people?" she asked during one of their sessions. "Any unusual abilities or experiences?" Deho thought about it carefully. "I've always been good at fixing things, even when I don't understand how they work. My supervisors say I have good instincts for spotting problems before they happen." "Anything else? Enhanced reflexes? Better pattern recognition?" "Maybe," he admitted. "I've never been in a fight, but I'm good at sports that require quick reactions. And I seem to notice details that other people miss." Dr. Lee made notes on her tablet. These small advantages might seem minor, but they could be significant if the Nexari had enhanced him in subtle ways. Meanwhile, Park So-jin was dealing with the practical problems of protecting Deho from the various groups that wanted to get their hands on him. Zephyrian pilgrims were trying to sneak onto the station to worship him. Keth agents were attempting to kidnap him. Even some human organizations wanted to study him. "We can't keep him here much longer," she told Administrator Choi Min-ho. "The station is becoming a target. Every day we delay increases the risk of a major incident." Before Min-ho could respond, an urgent message came through the communication system. It was from Earth's government, and the news was both good and bad. "We've located 3 more survivors from the New Soul incident," the message announced. Lim Tae-young, age 50, currently living on Mars. Bae Yun-ji, age 49, working at a research station near Jupiter. Oh Seung-min, age 51, serving aboard a deep space exploration vessel. The message continued with more disturbing information. All 3 have reported that their childhood scars have begun glowing brighter since the Nexus Station incident. "We believe there may be a connection between the survivors that we don't yet understand." Dr. Lee studied the data that came with the message. Each survivor had been marked in a different location on their body. Deho's scar was on his left arm. Tae-young's was on his right shoulder. Yoonji's marked her back and Seung-min carried his on his chest. "It's like a puzzle," she murmured to herself. "Each mark is a piece of something larger." Her research was interrupted by alarms throughout the station. Ships were approaching Nexus Station from multiple directions. Some were Keth warships, moving in attack formation. Others were civilian vessels carrying Zephyrian pilgrims. A few were unmarked ships that could belong to anyone. "All hands to battle stations," Min-ho announced over the station's communication system. "This is not a drill. Prepare for possible combat." Deho could hear the sounds of weapons being powered up and defensive systems coming online. Through the small window in his quarters, he could see the lights of approaching ships getting brighter. "This is my fault," he said to So-jin when she came to check on him. "All of this chaos is happening because of what I am." "You didn't choose to be marked," she replied, And you didn't choose for that scanner to detect it. Sometimes events are set, in motion by forces beyond our control. The first shots were fired by a Keth boarding vessel that tried to dock with the station by force. Nexus Station's defensive weapons destroyed it quickly, but more ships were coming. The battle for control of the galaxy's most important marked human had begun. As the fighting intensified around the station, Dr. Lee made a breakthrough in her research. The energy patterns in Daeho's scar weren't random. They contained information, encoded in a way that was slowly becoming clear to her. Its coordinates, she announced to anyone who would listen. The marks contain spatial coordinates for a location in deep space. What kind of location? Min-ho asked over the communication system as he directed the station's defense. I don't know yet, but I think when all 4 survivors are brought together, their marks will reveal the complete coordinates. The Nexari left us a message, and we're only now learning how to read it. The battle outside continued, but Dr. Lee's discovery had changed everything. The survivors weren't just random people who had been spared by alien gods. They were carriers of information, living keys to a mystery that the Nexari had died to preserve. As explosions lit up the space around Nexus Station, Daeho realized that his simple life as a cargo inspector was over forever. Whether he wanted it or not, he had become a crucial piece in a puzzle that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The question was, what would they find when the puzzle was finally completed? The battle around Nexus Station grew worse by the hour. More ships arrived every few minutes, turning the space around the station into a chaotic battlefield. The Keth hegemony had sent their most advanced warships, determined to capture Daeho at any cost. Zephyrian pilgrimage fleets tried to land on the station while dodging both defensive fire and Keth attacks. Several other species had sent their own ships, some to help protect the station, and others to ensure the marked human didn't fall into the wrong hands. Dr. Kang Junseo, the station's chief xenobiologist, had been studying the energy readings from Daeho's scar around the clock. His latest discovery changed everything they thought they knew about the survivor's mark. Administrator Choi, he called over the communication system while explosions lit up the space outside his laboratory. I need to speak with you immediately. Min-ho's voice crackled through the speakers from the command center. I'm a little busy keeping us all alive, Doctor. Can it wait? No, sir. What I've found explains why everyone is so desperate to get their hands on the marked humans. A few minutes later, Min-ho arrived in the laboratory with Park Sojin and Dr. Lee Hyejin. Through the windows, they could see the lights of weapon fire as the station's defensive systems held off another wave of attackers. Show me what you found, Min-ho said without wasting time on pleasantries. Dr. Kang activated his holographic display, showing detailed scans of Daeho's scar. The energy pattern was incredibly complex, far more sophisticated than they had first realized. The mark isn't just coordinates, he explained. It's a complete navigational system that includes star charts, quantum signatures, and what appears to be a countdown timer. Countdown to what? Sojin asked. I don't know yet, but the timer is synchronizing with similar patterns we're detecting from the other survivors. When Earth's government contacted the 3 other marked humans, their scars began resonating at the same frequency as Mr. Kim's. Dr. Lee studied the data with growing excitement and concern. It's like they're waking up. The marks have been dormant for 47 years, but now they're becoming active. There's more, Dr. Kang continued. The coordinates don't point to any known star system. They're directing us toward a region of space that our surveys have always shown as empty. But according to these readings, something massive is located there. Before anyone could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout the station. These weren't battle alerts. They were much more serious. All personnel to emergency stations, an automated voice announced. Hull breach detected in multiple sections. Unknown energy signature detected approaching the station. Min-ho activated his portable communication device. Command, this is Administrator Choi. What's the situation? Sir, we're detecting an energy pattern unlike anything in our databases. It's not coming from any of the ships around us. It's coming from inside the station. They rushed back to Daeho's quarters, where they found him standing in the middle of the room with his eyes closed. His scar was glowing so brightly that it lit up the entire space. Energy was crackling around him like miniature lightning. "Dae-ho," Sojin called to him, but he didn't respond. Dr. Kang quickly scanned him with his instruments. His neural activity is off the charts. Something is communicating with him through the mark. "Can you hear anything?" Dr. Lee asked. "I'm detecting structured electromagnetic pulses. It's definitely communication, but not in any language or format we understand." Suddenly, Daeho's eyes opened. They were glowing with the same energy as his scar. When he spoke, his voice sounded different, deeper and more resonant than normal. "They are coming," he said in a tone that made everyone in the room shiver. "The darkness that devours light. The silence that consumes sound. They have found us again." "Who's coming?" Minho demanded. "Who are you talking about?" Daeho turned to look at him, and for a moment it seemed like someone else was looking out through his eyes. "The Nexari chose us to be watchers, to see what others cannot see, to fight what others cannot fight." The energy around him pulsed stronger, and suddenly everyone in the room could see what he was seeing. Images flashed through their minds. Empty space that wasn't really empty. Moving shadows that ate entire stars. Creatures of pure darkness that left nothing behind but void. The Void Seekers. Daeho continued in that strange, resonant voice. "They come from between realities, consuming everything they touch. The Nexari fought them for thousands of years, but they were losing. So they chose Guardians. They chose us." Dr. Lee stepped closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Why humans? Why children?" "Young minds adapt better to the changes," Daeho replied. "Adult brains would have been destroyed by the enhancements, but children can grow into the modifications, become something more than they were." "What kind of enhancements?" Dr. Kang asked, his instruments recording everything. "Enhanced perception to see through Void Seeker camouflage, improved reflexes to react to attacks that move faster than thought, pattern recognition to understand their tactics, and most importantly, resistance to their reality-altering effects." The images in their minds shifted, showing the final battle between the Nexari and the Void Seekers. They watched as beings of pure energy fought against creatures of absolute darkness in a war that spanned multiple dimensions. "The Nexari sacrificed themselves to drive the Void Seekers back," Daeho continued. "But they knew it was only temporary, so they prepared Guardians who could fight when the darkness returned." "And it's returning now?" Sojin asked. The energy around Daeho suddenly faded, and his eyes returned to normal. He stumbled backward, and would have fallen if Minho hadn't caught him. I saw them." Daeho gasped, his voice back to normal. "They're at the edge of the galaxy, moving toward us. We have maybe 6 months before they reach populated systems." Dr. Kang's instruments were going crazy with readings. The quantum signatures are shifting across the entire region. Something massive is approaching from outside normal spacetime. The communication system activated with an urgent message from Earth. "Nexus Station, this is Fleet Admiral Ko Sung-jin. We're receiving reports of spacetime distortions along the galactic rim. Long-range sensors are detecting movement of objects that shouldn't exist." Minho responded immediately. "Admiral, we have critical information about what's causing those distortions. You need to get the other marked survivors to our location immediately." "The other survivors?" The Admiral's voice crackled through static interference. "We're trying, but the Keth hegemony has launched a full-scale attack on human colonies. They're not just after the marked individuals anymore. They're trying to capture as many humans as possible." Through the laboratory windows, they could see the battle around the station intensifying. More ships were arriving, but these weren't from the galaxy's known civilizations. They were human vessels coming to protect their people. Commander Park Dong-hyun's voice came through the communication system from his flagship. "Nexus Station, this is the Human Defense Fleet. We're moving to engage Keth forces and clear a path for the transport carrying the other survivors." The battle that followed was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The humans fought with a determination and skill that surprised even their allies. Ships that should have been destroyed by superior firepower somehow survived and struck back with devastating precision. "How are they doing that?" a Veltari observer asked over the general communication channel. Dr. Kang was monitoring the human fleet's performance. Their reaction times are faster than should be possible. They're anticipating enemy movements before they happen. It's not just the marked survivors, Dr. Lee realized. The enhancement is spreading somehow. Being near Daeho is affecting other humans. The truth was becoming clear. The Nexari hadn't just marked 4 human children. They had planted the seeds of enhancement in the entire human species. Seeds that were now beginning to sprout as the threat they were designed to fight approached. As the battle raged outside, Daeho felt the other survivors getting closer. Their marks were resonating more strongly, drawing them together like pieces of a cosmic puzzle that was finally ready to be solved. But time was running out. The Void Seekers were coming, and the galaxy had no idea how to fight an enemy that could erase entire realities from existence. The transport ship carrying the other 3 survivors finally docked with Nexus Station after fighting through waves of Keth attackers. Lim Tae-young, Bae Yoonji, and Oh Seung-min walked through the airlock with their scars glowing brightly, drawn together by forces they didn't fully understand. When all 4 survivors met in the station's main conference room, something extraordinary happened. Their marks began to pulse in perfect synchronization, and holographic images appeared in the air above them. The images showed star charts, weapon designs, and tactical information about enemies that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. Dr. Lee Mi-young, who had joined Dr. Lee Hyejin's research team, worked frantically to record and analyze the data streaming from the survivors' marks. "It's a complete database," she announced in amazement. "Everything the Nexari learned about fighting the Void Seekers, weapons that can hurt them, defensive strategies, even predictions about when and where they'll attack." Engineering Chief Nam Hyun-woo studied the weapon designs with growing excitement. "These technologies, they're centuries beyond anything we have, but the principles make sense. We could build these if we had enough time and resources. How much time do we have?" Admiral Ko Sung-jin asked over the communication link from his flagship. Seung-min, who had been quiet since arriving, suddenly spoke up. His voice carried the same resonant quality that Daeho's had earlier. "The first scouts are already here. They've been watching us for weeks, hidden in the spaces between realities." As if responding to his words, the battle outside the station suddenly changed. New contacts appeared on sensors throughout the area, but these weren't ships from any known species. They were dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, moving in ways that defied the normal laws of physics. Captain Song Ji-hoon, commanding one of the human escort vessels, was the first to engage the unknown contacts. "All ships, be advised, we have new hostiles on the battlefield. They're unlike anything I've ever seen." The Void Seeker scouts moved through space like living shadows, passing through solid matter as if it wasn't there. When they attacked, entire sections of ships simply ceased to exist, leaving behind perfectly smooth holes where hull plating and equipment had been moments before. The Keth warships that had been attacking the station suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that their weapons couldn't touch. Energy beams passed harmlessly through the dark shapes and missile strikes had no effect whatsoever. But the humans fought differently. As the enhancement in their systems activated more fully, they began to perceive the Void Seekers' true forms. What looked like empty shadow to other species appeared as twisted, multi-dimensional creatures to human eyes. "I can see them," Commander Park Dong-hyun reported over the communication system. "They're not invisible. They're folded through dimensions we don't normally perceive, but somehow we can track their movements." The 4 survivors on Nexus Station watched the battle through the station's sensors, and the information flowing from their marks helped the human fleet adapt its tactics in real time. "Target the intersection points," Yoonji called out, her consciousness somehow connected to the human ships. "Where they fold back into our reality, that's where they're vulnerable." Tae-young added his own insights. "They move in patterns, predictable patterns. If you can anticipate where they'll be, you can hurt them." The tide of battle began to turn as human weapons, guided by insights from the survivors, started hitting their targets. The Voidseeker scouts, surprised by effective resistance, began to retreat back into the spaces between dimensions. But their withdrawal triggered something else. Reality itself began to ripple around the edges of the battlefield, and new shapes emerged from the distortions. These were larger than the scouts, more dangerous, and they brought weapons of their own. "The scouts were just testing us," Deho said grimly as he watched the sensor readings. "Now they're sending hunters." The Void Seeker hunters moved with deadly purpose, targeting the human ships that had proven most effective against their scouts. When they fired their weapons, entire vessels didn't just explode. They were erased from existence so completely that it was as if they had never been built. Admiral Ko Sung-jin's voice cut through the chaos. "All ships fall back to defensive positions around the station. We can't win this fight with conventional tactics." But the survivors had more to offer than just tactical advice. As the danger increased, their enhancements activated more fully. Energy began to flow between them, and their combined consciousness reached out to every human in the battle zone. "Listen to us," their united voice spoke through every communication system in the human fleet. "Feel what we feel, see what we see. The Nexari didn't just mark us, they marked all of humanity. Every human carries the potential for enhancement. You just need to open yourselves to it." What happened next would be remembered as the moment humanity truly awakened to its destiny. Across the battlefield, human crew members suddenly found their reflexes sharpening, their perception expanding, their understanding of the enemy becoming crystal clear. Captain Song Ji-hoon felt the change wash over him like a wave of cool water. Suddenly he could see the Void Seekers not as mysterious shadows, but as alien creatures with recognizable attack patterns and exploitable weaknesses. "All human vessels," he broadcast to the fleet. "I'm uploading new targeting data. These things aren't invincible. They just fight in ways we haven't learned to counter yet." The battle that followed was the first victory in what would become known as the Void War. Enhanced human crews fought with precision and coordination that amazed even themselves. They could anticipate enemy movements, adapt to new tactics instantly, and coordinate their attacks with a unity of purpose that seemed almost telepathic. The Void Seeker hunters, accustomed to facing prey that couldn't perceive or effectively fight them, found themselves up against an enemy that not only could see them clearly, but could match their dimensional manipulation abilities. When the last Void Seeker hunter was destroyed, a cheer went up from human ships throughout the system. But the celebration was short-lived. Long-range sensors were detecting massive distortions throughout the galaxy as the main Void Seeker force prepared to emerge from their hidden dimension. Admiral Ko Sung-jin opened a communication channel to every ship and station in the system. "This is Admiral Ko of the Human Defense Fleet. Today we've learned that our species was chosen and enhanced for this moment. We've seen the enemy, and we've proven we can fight them." He paused, looking at the display showing Void Seeker contacts, appearing at the edge of dozens of star systems. "But this is just the beginning. The real war starts now. We are the guardians the Nexari died to create. We are humanity's answer to an existential threat that no other species can fight effectively, and we will not fail." Dr. Lee Hae-jin sent out her own broadcast from Nexus Station, this one directed to every civilization in the galaxy. "To all species receiving this message, the humans among you are not your enemies or your subjects for study. They are your protectors. The enhancement they carry makes them uniquely capable of fighting the Void Seekers. Stand with us or face the Void alone." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been fleeing from human contact suddenly realized their mistake. The Velthari Collective offered their crystal-based technology for human ship enhancements. The Makari Trade Federation provided resources for weapon manufacturing. Even some Keth commanders abandoned their orders and joined the growing alliance. But it was the Therian Elder who had first recognized Deho's mark who provided the most meaningful response. His message was simple but profound. "The burned ones have awakened. The long watch begins. We stand with the Guardians." As ships from across the galaxy converged on human space to join the fight, the 4 survivors stood together on Nexus Station's observation deck. Their marks had stopped glowing, but the connection between them remained strong. "Do you think we can win?" Yunji asked quietly. Deho looked out at the assembled fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, all united behind humanity's enhanced defenders. The Nexari believed we could, he replied. They sacrificed everything to give us this chance. We can't let them down. The security gate that had started it all still stood in Cargo Bay 7, its display now showing a simple message in Galactic Standard. Guardians acknowledged. Protection protocol active. Kim Dae-ho had begun this journey as a simple cargo inspector whose only worry was completing his daily work routine. Now he stood at the center of the galaxy's defense against an enemy that could erase entire realities from existence. The Void Seekers were coming in force, but they would face something they had never encountered before. A species that had been forged by divine sacrifice specifically to fight them, supported by allies who understood that humanity's survival meant everyone's survival. The age of hiding was over. The age of guardians had begun.